So good evening all to the 63rd session of the weekly huddle. I'm your host Anup, and joining me today is my friend and co-host Praneeth. We are cardiologists working at Care Hospital Banjara Hills. The huddle is an unscripted audience level interaction addressing clinical scenarios that we encounter in our daily clinical practice. We typically pick up a topic and or a clinical case like the one that we have today, and we try to restrict our discussion around that particular case. The basic premise of the huddle is to bring our casual hallway discussions to a more organized platform like this one and share our ideas. While science and guidelines are welcome, with the huddle, we intend to help a physician translate established knowledge to clinical practice, taking local factors and practice patterns into account. This is not a speaker and audience model, rather a casual interaction, which means any of the attendees can raise their hand or unmute themselves to give their input or ask any question. As a courtesy, you should wait for others to finish their thoughts before you unmute yourself. And as this is our 63rd session, so which means we have done more than 60 hourly discussions so far, and more than or approximately 45 of them are uploaded online. We also have a WhatsApp group where we do offline discussion of the topics that we have discussed. All those links I have shared in the chat box for people who are joining us for the first time. You can look into those chat box and refer to those links. I have also shared today's case in the chat box for you guys to take a look at it as well. So as a format, I always start the case discussion by asking Praneeth about his opinion, and then we will go down the list of our attendees, ask individual opinion about how they would manage this case. So this patient, I saw him about a month ago. He's a 48-year-old male. He works in a government, a PSU sector, where he had been working mostly a desk job. He goes for morning walk for about 10-15 minutes, but that's about it. He doesn't have much exertion in his life. He's known hypertensive for 6 years. He takes a combo tablet of telmisartan and chlorthalidone, which keeps his blood pressure reasonably controlled. It just so happened that his colleague passed away recently with an acute MI, where by the time he presented to the hospital, it was delayed onset and he could not be saved. He died of what you call electrical disturbance. Since then, he has been complaining of this atypical chest discomfort lasting for a few seconds and also has got an overall anxiety related to this event. He does not have any other symptoms. He is able to continue his daily work. He is also able to continue his morning activity as well. So with all this concern, and this event happened approximately 2-3 months back. So finally, he decided to undergo a checkup, and the so-called he picked up one of those master health checkup packages in the hospital. Before this, he used to get random tests here and there, nothing systematic. So in the master health checkup, I'll just make it very brief so that we go to the real meat of the talk. His basic laboratory findings, TSH, HbA1c, they were all normal. His ECG and echocardiogram, electrolytes, renal function, hemogram, all those were pretty normal. There was no any sign of severe LVH or anything of that sort. He also underwent TMT as a part of a treadmill test, as a part of his master checkup. He went 7.5 minutes on TMT, reaching a METs of 10.1 and a target heart rate of 101%. At the peak stress or in recovery, there were no STT changes, but what was noticed was frequent premature ventricular contractions or PVCs towards the late part of stage 3 and peak exercise and peak stress, which initially started with one beat every third or fourth normal beat. But during early recovery phase, he was having far more frequent PVCs, almost like in a bigeminy pattern. And all of those PVCs, they settled after about 5 minutes of rest. He never had, excuse me, he never had VT or a sustained uh, PVCs. morphological analysis suggested that there were two different morphologies of PVCs. Both were left bundle in morphology. So he didn't have any VT. He had mild chest discomfort towards the later part of his TMT, which got settled immediately after recovery. His blood pressure response for the TMT was normal. So he comes to me with this so-called concerning finding in the TMT. His rest of the labs are okay. And the points that I want to discuss today, taking this case into account, is with this PVCs which were found on treadmill and not found on a baseline ECG, does this patient need ischemia workup? Is that suggestive of coronary artery disease? That is one. Second, is this patient at higher risk for ventricular arrhythmia, the fact that he had got so many PVCs during exercise? Third question is his expected longevity lower than the age-matched peers, understanding that even if it is not ischemic TMT, it is abnormal TMT. It's not a normal treadmill response. And how we should manage these kind of patients, what kind of investigations we should do, and how do we handle this case or counseling for that matter. So this is a detailed analysis of this test, and I have a very quick follow-up of this patient as well. But before that, let us stick to our today's discussion. How should we read these induced exercise-induced PVCs in these patients who have got otherwise unremarkable TMT? So Praneeth, I'll start with your impression, and then we will take impression of our colleagues who are attending today.
Yeah. Good evening, Anup. So this case, firstly, I think he's anxious because of the association of his colleague being passed away recently. He's probably suffering with thanatophobia, which was one of the topics which we discussed in one of our huddle sessions. And to begin with, he does not have any cardiac issues. The chest pain or the chest discomfort that he is complaining looks atypical, and he underwent a master health check. And so, whenever we interpret TMT, the first thing is looking at the pre-test probability of he having coronary artery disease. So, the pre-test probability of coronary artery disease seems to be very low because he only has risk factor of coronary artery disease. Sorry, only has risk factor of hypertension and no other significant history, and relatively young guy. So probability of having CAD seems to be low. So interpretation of TMT also should be interpreted based on that. Now coming to his treadmill changes, he had good exercise threshold and reached the target heart rate. So the treadmill will be interpretable because of the criteria that he met. When we talk about ischemia per se, the importance being given is about the STT changes, which are not there. So the question of CAD is ruled out. Now, regarding the other findings which we had, that is frequent PVCs, which are of more than two morphologies. PVCs, I believe, do not indicate ischemia unless it is actually a VT, which he did not have. So frequent VPCs for me does not ring a bell in terms of ischemia. So I would not be proceeding further in evaluating his presence of coronary artery disease, ordering any other investigations. So maybe from his, I would reassure him that his risk of having any future heart attacks is less likely. Now the interesting question is about his risk of ventricular arrhythmias, which could be equally one of the reasons of probably sudden cardiac death. Again, a structurally normal heart with VPC is only under ischemia, with his profile being a regular or not exercising or not doing strenuous activity. Again, I believe his risk of having future ventricular arrhythmias and so-called sudden cardiac deaths also seems to be less likely. So again, from this end, I would probably reassure him and ask him to be okay and need not worry about those frequent VPCs. Regarding the expected longevity compared to the age matched peers, if I remember correctly, what I read is those PVCs in general said to be carry an increasing risk of mortality in the near future. So I think if we have to answer as per textbook, then his risk will be slightly high. Though at this point of time, I would not be discussing these things for him and scare him out because he's already scared and he's having the thanatophobia. So I would not discuss these things. And regarding his management strategy, I would essentially reassure him and do nothing more than this. Probably ask him to stop doing any more investigations and notice his symptoms. And if he has any new symptoms or worsening symptoms, then probably come for follow up. But most importantly, I would reassure him and send him home. This is how I would see this patient.
Would you put him on any therapy at this point?
No, no, not on any therapy other than controlling his hypertension.
Are you worried that he may be having some sort of cardiomyopathy which is causing these PVCs?
The probability seems to be less likely. Again, he does not have any symptoms suggestive or the history suggestive. So the it doesn't ring a bell to me. I do not think he will be having any cardiomyopathy because of lack of family history or any other history suggesting to investigate further. Maybe so. I would at this point of time take a gap, reassure, and if he has any frequent episodes of these issues, then probably I would take it forward. But at this point of time, I will wait. I would not proceed further on any investigations.
All right. Okay, Praneeth, that's a decent or good starting point for us. Let us move forward. Praveen, if I could get your thoughts on this case, how do you see this abnormality? Is there something you will do differently than what Praneeth discussed about?
Good evening, sir. Sir, regarding this case, the whatever the VPCs that are occurring, if this patient had a chest pain along with the VPCs and there are STT changes, the probability of ischemia would be given consideration. But you said that there were no STT changes, only VPCs were there. And if these VPCs have continued for a duration of more than 5 minutes, and then the probability of these VPCs causing cardiomyopathy can be considered. But for me, the point of ischemia is not there, sir. And regarding the management strategy, I would add up a beta blocker because he might be having anxiety because he lost his colleague, and to relieve the anxiety and all that, and probably the beta blockers added can reduce the VPC burden if they are of concern. So these would be the points added, sir. And regarding the risk of ventricular arrhythmia, if the patient is having any sensations of the palpitations in the next follow-up, if the patient is having any history of the symptoms of palpitations, I would quantify the burden and then take his the risk of the ventricular arrhythmia.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Praveen. And what I read from you is that you would be more inclined towards starting him on beta blocker at this time.
Yes.
And if there is any symptoms later on, then you would do burden assessment with a Holter or whatnot, and then you will try and see what all is going on.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right? Yeah.
Yes,
My
sir.
question to you is the same as what I had for Praneeth. Are you thinking of any cardiomyopathy in this patient? Something which is too in the nascent stage for it to cause any LV dysfunction, but enough to cause these PVCs. My question, but basically my question is, like, stress induced PVC is not normal, or exercise induced PVC is not normal. So the question is, are we thinking, is it a myocardial problem, or is it a electrical problem, or you think it is not a problem at all? You think this could be just a normal finding?
Sir, considering the triggering factor, if we consider the triggering factor to be the what you call the recent loss of his colleague, and that is causing the what you call the symptoms, the atypical chest pain, this phobia of death, then it could be an electrical problem, sir, rather than that of a myocardial problem. So I would think in that perspective.
All right, perfect, good. Let me ask more opinion. Dr. Vijay Reddy, we have, sir, you joined us last time. If you could unmute yourself and share your thoughts about this case, how do you see it? And if there is anything different that you would do?
Thank you very much, Dr. Anup. My take on this guy is 48-year-old, and hypertensive on angiotensin 2 receptor blockers. And his TMT is showing exercise-induced VPCs, which is persisting during recovery up to 3 minutes. So VPCs occurring only during exercise are mostly benign, but VPCs extending or occurring only during exercise, they should be viewed with caution. That is number one. And the second aspect is, as you said, the morphology of the VPCs is LVB type. So the origin, the source is most probably from the RV. And we cannot rule out the anxiety component in this case, because the patient is thinking that he lost one of his close friend at the very young age due to MI and VT. So that compounded his agony. And the thing is, the VPCs which we are getting in this, they cannot be viewed in as a benign condition. He should undergo Holter and or extended Holter to quantify the burden, whether it is more than 10% or not. And based on this report, we should treat the patient. I will start him straight away because he is getting frequent VPCs, the Lowndes grade 3A. So I think he needs beta blocker.
Okay, sir, one question, and it's a premature question, but because since you are talking about beta blocker, I thought I'll just ask, is there a role of antiarrhythmic in these cases if the PVC burden is high?
See, usually when the VPC burden is usually better to give only beta blockers rather than these antiarrhythmic drugs because of the adverse events with the beta blocker is reasonably safe.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. We'll continue our discussion. I will invite my other colleagues for their opinion. Let me see, we have got Dr. Mallikarjun with us. Dr. Mallikarjun, if you can hear me, could you please unmute yourself and share your thoughts regarding the case that we are discussing today? Dr. Mallikarjun, could you please unmute yourself? Okay, maybe he's not able to hear me. Do we have Prashant here or did he leave? Prashant. Okay, Prashant, we don't have. Dr. Saket, could you please unmute yourself and share your thoughts about this case, exercise-induced PVCs?
Yeah, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
More or less, I agree with Dr. Praveen. More or less, my management would be in that terms only. I'd like to start beta blocker and then wait and watch. Maybe if on follow-up, if patient is symptomatic, then I try to evaluate. Otherwise, probably only with add beta blocker and see if there are any resting VPCs. If there are no resting VPCs, if he is not symptomatic, then I'd leave him as such. If he's symptomatic, then Holter and further evaluation.
Saket, here is my question. This whole symptomatic business. So, we have a patient who comes and says, I have got this chest discomfort, which lasts for 1 or 2 seconds. Could this be the symptom? Could this be what we often see in these patients who have a post-PVC compensatory pause, and that gives them kind of a pseudo palpitation kind of symptom, which is often described as chest discomfort. Do you think that that could be the symptom that we are talking about right now?
Symptom, because I mean, it was more or less atypical pain, non-exertional. Yeah, I mean, if post VPC pause, if that is considered as a symptom, then if it is frequent, then we can evaluate it further. And I mean, yeah, more or less, Holter can be offered if it is persisting despite adding beta blocker.
Okay, all right, Dr. Saket, thank you for your opinion. Dr. Anil is there with us. Dr. Anil Behra, sir, could you, if you can hear me, could you please unmute yourself and share your thought about today's case? Dr. Anil? Okay, maybe there is some technical issue. Dr. Mallikarjun, if you can hear me, could you please unmute yourself? Okay, Dr. Santosh, can you hear me? If you can hear me, could you please unmute yourself and share your thoughts regarding this case?
Good evening, sir. The VPCs, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can hear you.
The VPCs, they are specifically which are seen during recovery, has long been thought to be the harbinger of increased mortality than those who are seen during the stress. So, if the patient has VPCs specifically during recovery phase, I would like to investigate in terms of cardiac MRI to look for any cardiomyopathy changes, not severe enough to cause any clinical symptoms now. That's what I'll go about. And in this case, sir, specifically, I would like to wait and watch because the VPCs during stress are thought to be of benign in nature.
Okay, would you do any further investigation at this point, or would you just let him go?
I'll let him go, sir.
Okay, all right. Dr. Shrikar, I can hear, I can read your comment on the chat box. I invite you to please unmute yourself and share your thoughts and maybe put up your question, the one that you put it in the chat box. Dr. Shrikar?
Good evening, sir. I would like to know whether there is an ST segment depression variation between peak and recovery in the VPCs.
Right, so he didn't have any ST segment depression. He had a upsloping, very minor ST changes, which we did not consider it as significant. So he didn't have any ischemic ST changes, no?
Even then, with polymorphic VPCs, which are generally uncommon with normal substrate, there might be something pathological going on. So I would like to investigate him further for ischemia or an underlying cardiomyopathy.
And how would you do that? What would be your next step in this case?
So, though his chest pain is atypical with polymorphic VPCs, I would like to get an CT-CAG to rule out any ischemic etiology. If CT-CAG comes out to be normal, then probably an MR would further give us an idea about if anything is pathological in the myocardium.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Srinivas Raju is with us. Sir, I hope you got the case. I know you joined a little bit late, but I hope you got the case that we are discussing. If you could share your thoughts about how would you manage this case, Dr. Srinivas?
Yeah, Dr. Anup, I'm somewhere outside, but if my voice is not clear, sorry for that. I believe this patient has a good LV function.
Yes, his LV function is good and your voice is also perfect.
Okay. Yeah, in case the LV function is good and the chest pain is atypical, and if there are only upsloping ST depressions, probably we don't need to worry. But in case you are suspecting any cardiomyopathy or autonomic dysfunction which is responsible for the PVCs. Or if you are suspecting a cardiomyopathy, you can do a cardiac MRI if there's suspicion of any RV outflow VPCs, or if they are just regular VPCs without any specific morphology, then we would consider them as benign and probably we wouldn't need to worry about it.
Okay, all right. Dr. Sandeep is here with us. Dr. Sandeep, how would you manage this case? Your thoughts, next step of action?
Good evening, Dr. Anup and all. My management is more or less the same. I would try to, for the symptoms, I would not consider his symptoms to be significant. So management-wise, I would try to assess the VPC burden. I would go ahead with the 24-hour Holter monitoring, and at the same time try to evaluate for the thyroid, electrolytes, and basic workup and magnesium levels and all. And if I don't find anything significant, then I would, and if there is a VPC burden or less than 10%, I would try to start with a beta blocker, then follow him up a couple of months later again with a Holter.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Okay, so we heard a lot of comments. Let me just try to summarize some of it, which is most of us, we think that exercise-induced PVC is unlikely or less likely to be reflective of ischemia. We certainly would want to get the PVC burden a little bit. We had a little bit of difference in opinion in terms of few doctors suggesting we can leave him at this, few doctors suggesting that let us at least look at the burden and make some adjustments accordingly. We had few colleagues who suggested that we should give him upfront beta blocker and then see how things are. And there was some thought about doing ischemia workup as well. The only thing which I would add is that this whole concept of polymorphic versus monomorphic, if we have two discrete morphologies of ventricular ectopies, they can't be considered polymorphic. They are just two monomorphic PVCs or VT for that matter. So if you get, if let us say you have a patient who has VT, but has got two different morphology VT, that doesn't necessarily make it a polymorphic VT. That just means there are two different morphology VT. So in this particular case, when I said that there are two morphology PVC, it should be interpreted as a two monomorphic PVC rather than a polymorphic PVC. So that is the only thing which I would add there. Everything else, I think that we discussed as part of what we would do in this case. Now, I will give you a follow-up information, and then maybe we can ask same our attendees' opinion about what they would do. So what I thought was these PVCs are not representative of ischemia. I did not think this patient needed any kind of ischemia workup. I do think that patient who gets exercise-induced PVC, they do have some sort of electrical pathy, if there is a term like that. They do have electrical dysfunction. And data also would suggest that patients who do have PVCs, they tend to have higher mortality than their age-matched peers. Now, can we do something to reduce that mortality? That part has not been very clear. The early CAS data and following that lot of other antiarrhythmic data set which came, and all of them pretty much showed that adding antiarrhythmic to reduce the PVC burden is not a good idea because it effectively increases mortality rather than reducing it. How does beta blocker have a role in this? That part is still not very clearly understood. So having said that, I reviewed his echocardiogram myself to make sure that there is no any cardiomyopathy that is not reported on the echo. And I was pretty much convinced that his echocardiogram was normal. The question of cardiac MRI, I kind of hold on to that. I said that let us just first see what goes on. I did put him on a 3-day Holter monitoring. Why 3-day? Because I go for a digital Holter, and the digital Holter patch has got a longevity of 3 days. So might well just put a 3-day Holter monitoring on this patient. And I told him to maintain his normal activity as what he does and just track his symptoms. So he came back with 3-day Holter monitoring report. And to answer Sandeep, your question, his thyroid test was normal and all of his electrolytes were also normal. I did not check magnesium levels, but all other electrolytes were normal. So he came back after a week with 3 days Holter monitoring, and his PVC burden on the Holter was 21%. It was primarily one morphology, but there was that second morphology going on as well. And this particular Holter that I did is a 2-channel Holter. It's not a 12-channel Holter. So we do know that there is some PVC, and we know that these are 2 different morphologies. We know that one is dominant than the other one, and we know that the overall burden is 21%. Till this point, I have not put him on any drug therapy. So Praneeth, again, I'm going to come back to you. Now I have this additional information. This was with me about 3 weeks ago. And how would you proceed with it now? Do you think you would do something differently at this point? And what medical management you will put him on?
Yeah, so 21% PVC burden is something which is quite large if you look at it. Now the question that I would look at is how does this PVC do damage to him? So one about the risk of having any ventricular arrhythmias and the sudden cardiac death, which he's worried about, and any long-term issues. So isolated PVCs again probably do not indicate ischemia or issues, and isolated PVCs per se are not indicative of malignant arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death, in my opinion. And I would try to see why is he having. Probably he might have had some myocardial injury, which is getting irritated and producing the frequent ectopics. With this 21%, I would be more worried that he may end up having tachycardiomyopathy in the future. So I would be more interested to control these PVCs to prevent him from developing this tachycardia-induced cardiomyopathy issues. But per se, whether it will cause any other damage, I'm not certain. But challenge equally is how do I prevent these things? Whether the beta blockers will be helpful in reducing these issues is something important. One thing probably I would like to know from patient is he using any alternative medicines which can probably interfere. Some of those things could be nasal drops or intermittent use of inhalers, and probably some alternative medicine, homeopathy or Ayurveda, which might trigger these ectopics. With previous experience from one of the patient, this is what I think. We poke him without any other strong reason. Getting VPCs is something which is quite unusual. So at this point of time, still I'm not very sure about starting him on any therapy. I would maybe relook at his history again, trying to find out any other cause of VPCs, and then if say the VPC burden is still high, and if I don't have any other reason, and then as I would probably agree with the other speakers on starting him on a low dose beta blocker and follow up about reduction of his VPC burden in an attempt to prevent a future tachycardia-induced cardiomyopathy.
Okay, so Praneeth, I like you asking question about alternative medicine. This I asked him first time when he came to me with this TMT report. At that time, he did say that he was using that homemade, that kadha, or those warm liquid that people drink to prevent COVID. This he had been doing for the past 2-3 months, but he told me he was not overdoing it. He was drinking it once a day, and he seemed to be pretty casual about it. I did tell him to stop that. That is the reason why I told him to stop for 2-3 days, to not do anything for 2-3 days, and then put on a Holter, so that I get a steady state of whatever I can. Everything else, I think what you mentioned is pretty obvious. What you also mentioned is that there are a lot of unknowns in these kind of cases. the guidelines or the practice patterns, none of which are very clear in terms of how to manage these patients. So Dr. Vijay, if I may invite you to get your opinion about this new information that we have about this patient, what would you do next? Dr. Vijay, if you could hear me, please unmute yourself.
21% VPC load is a very high PVC load. It can cause a severe LV dysfunction. So she should be treated and it should be evaluated further, though there are no ST segment changes because of the reasons of risk factors like hypertension and resting the recovery VPCs. I would like to evaluate for CAD and cardiomyopathy.
So, sir, would you do an angiogram on him? Would you do a coronary evaluation on him?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Because the TMT shows the aggravation of VPCs during recovery. That is a very important finding in a patient who is a known hypertension. Although he is a very anxious individual, I do give importance for VPCs which are occurring in recovery period. They are not benign. That too with a 21% of VPC load, which is very high. Definitely, I will rule out coronary artery disease.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. Praveen, what would you do? Your thoughts on this case?
Sir, considering the burden of 21%, I would stick on to increasing the dosage of beta blockers if this was recorded on the follow-up. And I would correlate the pattern of the burden of VPCs with that of the symptoms and when they are occurring. If they are occurring during the night time, which is the usual time, the occurrence of the anxiety and all that, because during the night time, and the correlation of the VPC burden that is seen on the Holter with that of the symptoms, whether the patient is feeling any palpitations or not, that I would be correlating. And with this burden, I would go for a cardiac MRI to see whether there is any myocardial damage. And if patient is already kept on the beta blockers and it is seen follow-up after 2 weeks, I would increase the dosage of beta blocker. And I would work up for the ischemia by doing an angiogram.
Okay, anybody else has got any other thoughts about how we would proceed this case? The forum is open. Anybody has got any thoughts? Please feel free to share. Srinivas, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Anup, I think probably coronary evaluation can be done in a non-invasive way if there's a high suspicion, nothing wrong. And beta blockers, if they take care of the VPCs and having excluded excess alcohol or smoking habits and any panic attacks, if they are not responsible for the VPCs, then there's definitely no role for amiodarone in a patient with good LV systolic function. ERIC study has shown that. So if you want to rule out a coronary involvement, then a non-invasive coronary evaluation is a better choice than an invasive coronary angiogram. And remotely on the follow-up, if there's any early evidence of developing a cardiomyopathy, then yes, probably RF ablation is a therapy of choice. And more so in a patient with an epicardial VPCs, those patients with epicardial VPCs, even with a lesser incidence or lesser percentage of VPC, they go in for a early cardiomyopathy as compared to an endocardial VPCs.
Okay, so one of the question asked was, or point discussed was the distribution or the frequency. So in his 3-day Holter, what I could notice is the time where he had PVCs most frequently were early morning, somewhere between, I would say 6 o'clock to maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. He had PVCs during the entire day, but a lot of them were early in the morning. And I could not correlate any specific symptoms with the degree of PVC that had to occur. there were few bigeminis and trigeminis, but there were no, there were few couplets and triplets, but there were no VT as such. So that is one information that that was discussed. Okay. Anybody else has got any other thoughts about this particular case that we are discussing? Anybody would do things differently? How about thinking about sarcoidosis in this case? Is there anybody who is thinking that this could be a sarcoid cardiomyopathy leading to rhythm disturbance, or this is too early? Anyone? Praneeth, what do you think? Could this be a representation of sarcoid as well?
Possibility is definitely there. Enough. If we are thinking that this is abnormal and there is some issue going on, if we are thinking about a possible cardiomyopathy, then going in terms of evaluation of that cardiomyopathy from infective to inflammatory and whatnot get started, starting from imaging of the chest, looking for lymph nodes, to cardiac MRI, to PET CT and whatnot. So this is something, once the clinical suspicion is something, if it is high, we can look into it. Maybe some clues to start is looking at a basic ESR, or maybe a C-reactive protein to begin with, probably may give us a hint to warrant a further hunt for these inflammatory pathologies. But I still am not very much convinced that there is some inflammatory pathology going in his heart. I believe other secondary causes, particularly that CADA or whatnot, may be contributing to him. So maybe keep a close follow-up and then go more aggressive on him.
Okay, all right. One question which is asked, I believe this is asked by you yourself, Praneeth. Would non-selective beta blocker like propranolol prefer to cardioselective beta blocker in this patient? I don't know the answer. If anybody knows this answer or has a preference, please you can speak up. And then Praveen wants to discuss about Eric's study that we will do towards the end if we have time. Let me invite Somaraju sir. Sir, you heard the case, you heard whatever we have been discussing so far. If you could please share your thoughts about things that we are missing or how you would do things differently.
Thank you, Anup, and all of you. Thank you very much for keeping me engaged and at this age and asking me opinions, which may or may not matter sometimes. But I just want to share that the VPC burden is such that I agree with most of the speakers who said you need to rule out coronary artery disease, you have to rule out myocardial disease. And having said that, one thing about say annual health checkup or executive health checkup, the less we talk about it, the better. It's very improper and inadequate. And it's not properly done in most of the hospitals, as we know. And also, I also want to know whether he has any risk factors or family history of diabetes. What is his weight? What does he have any symptoms or signs, features suggestive of obstructive sleep apnea? And what is his level of HbA1c? And because even pre-diabetes has significance. And potassium value, he said, is normal. Then I just wanted to emphasize the importance of, say, amongst risk factors for coronary artery disease. While we talk about the classic, all the known factors we talk about, we ignore the psychosocial issues related to the workplace. What is the nature of his workplace? What is his work? What does he do? And does he have any thing related to, say, frustration in his work? Say, frustration, by definition, is not more work. It is responsibility, but no authority. How is he with his manager or the boss? And workplace psychosocial issues do matter. And it is one of the major risk factors in the studies done about risk factors in coronary artery disease. And what are the risk factors for his colleague who died? And that also give us some clue. And I agree with whatever anyone said about ruling out coronary artery disease, CT coronary, calcium, and or even CT coronary without invasive angiogram, and something to do to rule out MRI. But most important issue is look at the person and his place of work, nature of work, and his say elements of depression and say frustration in work, and all those things do matter. And his colleagues' cause of death, his risk factors, and what else? Thank you.
Perfect, sir. Thank you so much for points that you raised. I will try to see if I can at least bring out some of these so that we can discuss a little bit more. You mentioned about his work. So I asked him in detail, and in the first meet, he works in as I said, in a public sector unit. He said, I am an auditor. I audit my company's work. That is what he said. And he said, my work mostly entails me sitting on the desk and working with the computer and papers. He did mention about workplace stress, but as I'm quoting your line, responsibility without authority, I did not get such impression from him, but certainly some work level stress is there.
Yeah, physical activity, apart from exercise, physical activity is weight, obstructive sleep apnea features, because he works, he sits from morning to evening. And how much is physical activity, lack of it is a significant risk factor also. You have to keep it in mind.
Right. I think that what sir is referring is this new study which was saying that sitting is the new smoking, where what we have looked into is the medical burden of sitting is often equated or maybe considered even higher than the medical burden of smoking. And that's how this whole concept comes. This is particularly relevant in our current context where majority of our workforce is actually in an office where you are sitting while you are in the car commuting to the work, then you come to the work, you sit for the entire day, and then back into the car, back home, and at home watching TV or talking to people. So most of the time we are sitting, and that has been equated to increased morbidity. There's no doubts about it. So this term is pretty relevant now, that sitting is the new smoking. And as far as his sleep apnea is concerned, sir, I did not test for it. He to me looked like a normal built guy. He didn't look to me as significantly obese. I did not do any particular screening for obstructive sleep apnea, which I typically do when I see a body physique which is supportive of sleep apnea. Having said that, we do know that sleep apnea is present even in those patients where body habitus does not speak up for obstructive sleep apnea. We should be far more vigilant towards it. Not only obese and people with short and fat neck are predisposed to obstructive sleep apnea, even a person with a relatively normal body habitus could have. So I did not do a screening questionnaire, which I typically do when I'm suspecting. In this particular patient, because I was not suspecting much, I did not do it. Risk factor for diabetes, he really, other than his age and maybe just a little bit of extra weight and sedentary lifestyle, there wasn't much. His A1C, if I remember correctly, was like 5.1, 5.2, something like that. It was too normal for me to even write it down in the note sheet that I have in front of me. I did not write it down. It was most likely perfectly normal. His family history, so his mother had diabetes, which was diagnosed in her late 50s. Other than that, there is nobody else in the family who is diabetic, and there is no any family history of coronary artery disease or sudden cardiac death as to speak. That's pretty much what I could add about his personal life. And as far as treatment wise is concerned, what I did with this patient, so I did not believe that I need to do a ischemia workup on him. After listening everybody's opinion, I'm thinking probably I should do a ischemia workup on him, but I did not do. I did do a cardiac MRI on him to look for any cardiomyopathy, and that cardiac MRI came out normal. I did put him on 50 milligrams of metoprolol to answer Praneeth's your question. I put him on metoprolol. I did not put him on propranolol. I didn't have a reason to choose one versus another. So I chose metoprolol 50 milligrams once a day. And my intention is to continue this for about 6 to 8 weeks and then do a repeat Holter at that time and see what is the PVC burden at that point of time. And since most of the suggestion today was also to do a ischemia workup, maybe next time when he comes, I will subject him to a CT coronary as well. So that is what I had to put up for this case. Once I have more follow-up on this, maybe next month, I will share it on the WhatsApp group about what happened with this particular patient. Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts about this case that we need to discuss? If not, then we can have Praveen comment about his ERIC study. Yes, Srinivas sir, please, you go ahead first.
Yeah, I think you have already completed your workup with an MRI. Just like how we have suspected sarcoidosis, even ARVD, I think we should keep it on mind when there are a lot of VPC burden.
Right. So, sir, ARVD was on top of my list, but his baseline ECG was normal. And because he had more than one morphology of PVC with the absolutely normal echo, I was less suspicious of ARVD, but still it was in my mind. Sarcoidosis was not in my mind, but I just put it up for today's discussion in case if we do want to think in that regard. I did not do any investigations pertaining to sarcoidosis. I just did a cardiac MRI to look for any signs of myocardial fibrosis, based upon which I would have done further investigation. But because MRI came normal, I did not do anything else. Praveen, you had something to add? Praveen, you have something to add?
I want to make a comment regarding the ERIC study, sir. When you have posted the case, I have gone through the literature which found to be relevant. The relation of the VPCs during recovery from a myocardial perfusion exercise stress test to the myocardial ischemia, the subset study of the ERIC, they have found that almost 20% of the patients had VPCs during recovery, and they found it to be an independent risk factor only if there are the VPCs during recovery are significant and having STT changes. And when they have analyzed the patient profile, they have seen that patients with a history of hypertension and previous history of CABG, age more than 65 years, and having triple vessel disease, these patients were found to be having increased cardiovascular events. So in the ERIC study.
Praveen, I would suggest that whatever you have quoted, if you could just share that link on our WhatsApp group. So
Yes, sir, I would share, sir.
I already see that you have shared 2 pictures of the InterHeart study. So we will go through with that at least. Okay. Any other questions, comments about today's case before we close it? Okay, all right. I just want to ask a few questions to Somaraju sir, because this is not that uncommon scenario for us. Sir, how many times have you sent patient for PVC ablation in your entire academic career? Not VT ablation, but PVC ablation?
Never.
Never.
I never believed in it.
You never believed in it. Okay, that answers the
And
question.
again, while we all agree with Praveen about the existing literature on PVCs during exercise test and PVCs during recovery period. It is only existing so-called uncertainty of medicine. All of us are aware, but each patient has to be looked at differently. But I agree that we have to rule out coronary artery disease. Having ruled out, leave it at that. That's important.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay. Sorry, I can't get your name. Your name on the display comes as SRL. Yeah, please go ahead.
I am Dr. Shankar.
Dr. Shankar, sir, your name comes as SRL. I don't know why.
SRL. I am also surprised.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. See, if the patient does not respond to the beta blockers or dihydro pyridine channel, calcium channel blockers, then class 1 or class 3 antiarrhythmics we should try. So before we go for the ablation, what is the opinion of Dr. Somaraju? Non-responsive to beta blockers in the patient. If all the causes...
Thank you, Shankar. And Anup, metoprolol is an exaggerated capabilities in the medical literature, and it's not available in UK. They still use atenolol, and choose some other beta blocker, not metoprolol. If you give metoprolol, 25-50 milligrams are not enough. Give it in very large doses. That's what I feel we should do if you want to give a beta blocker. And I won't go for any antiarrhythmic drug in this patient with the evidence available.
Shankar sir, you got
Okay,
your
sir.
you got your answer?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, that metoprolol dose, I think that is also something in India that we should be discussing, because the average metoprolol dose which is used in most of the heart failure trial is about 200 milligrams per day. And if we look at the overall meta-analysis, and somebody actually did this analysis. The reason why I remember this number is because I was asked this number. I didn't know the answer. Now I know. The average metoprolol in those meta-analyses is 167 milligrams per day. So that almost turns out to be more than 75 milligrams twice daily. So certainly, before we call it as a beta blocker non-responsive, we should hit a stage where either we are not able to increase the beta blocker dose because of low heart rate or blood pressure, or because patient is not able to tolerate because of fatigability. So that is just one thing that I want to highlight in terms of the dosing regimen for the metoprolol. The atenolol business, I think that atenolol business, one of the reasons why people don't like that much in the Western world, and I also don't like that much in India as well, is because it is a hydrophilic molecule, and the major clearance mechanism for atenolol and sotalol, those are the only two beta blockers which are hydrophilic, and they get excreted via kidneys. So these are the two beta blocker for which I have to watch their renal function. One of the beauty of beta blocker is that I don't have to do lab analysis. I can just do their hemodynamic parameter and I'll be okay, except for atenolol and sotalol, where I do have to look at their renal parameters. And these drugs become particularly challenging towards the elderly patient subset, because there, even with a normal creatinine, their GFR is actually lower. So I fear these patients may have accumulation of beta blocker leading to conduction disturbances and complete heart block. So that is the reason why I particularly don't like atenolol, and I know Western world hates atenolol primarily for this reason, and also for the business reason, because atenolol is not heavily marketed in that part of the world. So that is my idea about it. But except atenolol and sotalol, I'm okay with any other beta blockers, unless someone has any particular reservation for or against one. Okay, so that was my rant towards it. Shankar sir, you have any last comment before we close the session?
Amongst the occult heart diseases, the LV non-compaction also should be thought of, and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy also should be thought of amongst the occult cardiac diseases like ARVD and sarcoidosis, tuberculosis, or myocarditis, and dilated cardiomyopathy and others. So this HOCM and LVNC also should be thought of. So for that, we need cardiac MRI only.
Right, perfectly, sir. I think that if a person has got clinically significant HCM, typically between ECG and echocardiogram, at least it gives away some hint, which can later be confirmed on cardiac MRI. Somebody can confirm, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but if any person has got hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it is highly unlikely for that person to have both ECG and echocardiogram normal. One of them is going to show up something. Non-compaction cardiomyopathy, on the other hand, at times can get missed with echocardiogram, and ECG typically does not have a major signature of non-compaction cardiomyopathy. And I agree with you that these cases, they should get a cardiac MRI to be absolutely certain that they don't have non-compaction cardiomyopathy. Okay. Any other final thoughts? Anybody before we close the session? Maybe 10, 15 seconds. Somaraju sir.
Anup, just wanted to thank you for keeping us engaged in these difficult times. And we are enjoying all this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Those words mean a lot. This is, we do this for our own pleasure. We love doing this, and we have committed ourselves now. Now it's like a boat which has already left the harbor. Now we are not coming back. And because of support from you, Shankar sir, and many others who have been regular attendees of this session, I think that gives us the force to for us to continue. And I will always remember what you said, that even if I have half attendees, I will still continue the discussion. And I'm sure I will have half attendance between me and Praneeth. We'll always have at least half attendance. So thank you really for that support. We really need that, and we are appreciative of your presence here. Praneeth, your closing comment on today's session?
Yeah, no, a very common situation. PVC is being seen on a regular ECG and also on treadmills, and how to deal. What do we do? Because we just pause for a moment. How do we go forward? But a lot of aspects have been discussed, from coronary artery disease to cardiomyopathy and starting therapy with beta blocker, discussing on various beta blockers as well. I think history makes a plays a key role here, as was highlighted by BSR sir, asking about what he does and occupation, stress levels and whatnot, which might answer or give a clue to what is going on, and probably taking the opinion of our EP colleagues and starting therapy with the beta blockers, following it up, and based on the symptoms, do the investigation and treat it. So definitely a lot of value points got from this discussion today.
Perfect. Thank you all for attending today's session. As I told, that all of our sessions are recorded, and you should be able to access those on YouTube and podcast. Also, if you have not signed up for our WhatsApp group, please do that. There we discuss all the offline discussions related to the topic that we are talking about. I thank all of you for participating, and we will do this next week as well, just like what we have been doing for the past more than a year. And as all of you know, that we have switched from WebEx to Zoom. So if there is any feedback regarding this particular platform, please let me know. I will try to see how I can tune up from my end to make it a little bit better. Thank you all for attending. Good night. We'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you.